I'm playing around with Suno to see if it can generate South African music that is not mainstream. This is music which is not Amapiano, Deep House, because currently these are the two most popular South African genres. Deep House is pretty much well known internationally as well. But now can Suno create other South African music that is not so popular? So this could be that it's out of fashion or maybe it's too niched. Examples of this is going to be Lekompo, Kwaito, AfroPop, Maskandi, Township Bubblegum. I'm going to be using Suno versions 5.5 and version 4.5 to run this experiment. So now let's use version 5.5 and then we're going to start with Lekompo. This is a genre that became formalized around 2016 to 2019. Do not quote me on these dates. The point is that Lekompo is not really internationally popular. It's not on the same level as house or Amapiano. Okay, now this is definitely not Lekompo. AI is hallucinating, where the AI confidently generates an output, but it is completely wrong. Suno is even trying to use a Zulu title, but now Lekompo is a Sepedi, mostly Limpopo-based genre. So basically for Lekompo, Suno has failed. Now we're going to move on to Kwaito. This was once a very popular genre back in the early 90s until around mid-2000. You could say that Kwaito has now somehow evolved into Amapiano. So now let's try Suno for a Kwaito song. And once again, we have some heavy AI hallucination. This doesn't even come close to Kwaito. Suno uses the phrase Kazi and it's using Zulu. So it's trying very hard, but now the actual song is actually more Afrobeats pop. It sounds very similar to the first Lekompo song. So once again, if we're going to use a simple prompt to generate a Kwaito, Suno is simply going to fail. Okay, now I'm going to try Maskandi, which is a mostly traditional Zulu genre. It's also like a bit old. I'm going to be using Suno 5.5, which I am expecting that it's going to also fail. Okay, as expected, this is not Maskandi. Instead, Suno used American country music. It's very interesting that Suno did use the acoustic guitar. So somewhere in the database, there is a description of Maskandi being quite heavily driven by an acoustic guitar. But now Suno was just very lazy, and then it just reverted to using country music instead of actually playing a authentic Maskandi. I'm gonna do something a little bit different now, and then I'm gonna use version 4.5. And now this model is actually much better when it comes to Maskandi, especially just the first few seconds of the introduction. So both songs in the introduction, they do sound very authentic, but then as the song progresses, it degenerates into some American pop. So now on model 4.5, I'm gonna try the Kwaito genre again. This time around, I'm also going to use Google Gemini to help with the prompt. Google Gemini claims that it is actually possible to generate some 90s Kwaito song. Now using this prompt, and I'm also going to move the sliders around. I'm going to move the style influence to 78%, weirdness to about 28%. For the first song, Simply Bad. Now when we move on to the second song,
we are moving slow. Strictly local, let the baseline grow. From Johannesburg down to Durban town. Turn the volume up, never turn it down.
Now this time around, Suno is actually trying. It's not the best Kwaito song, but you can definitely tell this is a very good attempt at generating Kwaito. Now when I do try and use 5.5 to generate a Kwaito song, just moving the sliders again to try and force it. The output is some fake music which has borrowed from Amapiano, Afrobeats. So even the male vocals are mostly more Afrobeats. So basically, if you're going to use Suno versions 5.5 and version 4.5, if you're going to try and create non-mainstream South African music, it's simply going to fail. The models in their default state have not been trained enough to create convincing songs. But now my bigger gripe is that these versions of Suno, they confidently generate songs that simply borrow or steal from the next related genre, and then Suno presents the results as a definitive good song. It would be fair if somehow Suno could have an confidence indicator to show how much of the input is just pure guesswork and how much of it believes to be an authentic creation. I would feel very, very patronized if I'm prompting Suno for a South African Kwaito only to be given an Afrobeat song. So if you're going to try and go for these genres that are not really mainstream, Suno is simply going to fail.